Four divisions, four hosts, all battling it out for the Holy GrAHL of the American Hockey League, the Calder Cup. This is the Holy GrAHL Podcast with Andrew Rinaldi, Dina Weinheimer, Jeremy Paul, Michael Liu, and Zach Power.
Hello and welcome to episode 22, March 17th, version of Field Pass Hockey, the AHL's Holy GrAHL. And here at the Holy GrAHL, we're all thinking about everything American Hockey League and the yearly race to that Holy GrAHL, the Calder Cup. And before we get any further into this, I want to go around the screen and just in case anybody who's coming on who's a little bit new, we have a couple of faces here and we'll start just above me in alphabetical order. Andrew.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Rinaldi, for any of those who forgot this face. I cover the Grand Rapids Griffins and Chicago Wolves here at Field Pass Hockey. It's my second year doing it. And, Deuces, 22, big episode here.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling 22 over here. So it's our Taylor Swift year, our Taylor Swift episode. So what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Paul. I cover a beat for the Rochester Americans with Field Pass Hockey in my first season. Always a great time sitting here and recording with you guys.
Hi, I unfortunately can't make a 22 joke because that's still another year away. My name is Michael. I cover the Abbotsford Canucks for Field Pass Hockey, and this is my first year doing so. And it's first show back in a while, but I'm excited back to be here recording again.
We're excited to have you back because it's our 22nd birthday, which means we can now drink, gamble, and listen to Taylor Swift. I'm Zach Power, and I'm a writer here with Field Pass Hockey, and we got a really great show coming up here, but we do have a bit of breaking news. We got some cool stuff going on in the AHL this week. Now, this feels like forever, guys, but we do have some playoff berth clinching scenarios. So on Wednesday, the Stockton Heat can clinch a playoff berth with a win versus Bakersfield and a Tucson loss in regulation, overtime, or a shootout. Versus San Jose, or an overtime loss or a shootout loss versus Bakersfield and Tucson with a regulation loss versus San Jose. Guys, we talk so much about the playoff race and how it could finally be picking, every week we're seemingly picking, it could be Iowa, it could be this, but now we have our first berth. Like, this is huge.
Yeah, it's for me, it's the realization that, like, it kind of just hit me as you were talking about it, that we're going to have our first postseason in 3 years because of all of the circumstances that have come along with everything that's been going on in the world. And so, like, that's hitting me, and it's like, oh boy, like, it's happening. It's really happening. And, I think we've known for months that Stockton was going to make the playoffs, and it's just the mathematics are now confirming this, and I love it. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. Every game is bigger than the last, and oh boy, strap in once the playoffs start.
Well, and like you said, 3 years. Finally, the Checkers might not be able to call themselves defending Calder Cup champions because the bit's getting old. But I think I can't wait for Stockton's social media presence when they clinch. You'll all remember Utica's shade, the Utica-Stockton shade, back when both teams were getting toward 30 wins on the season. So can't wait to see what the Stockton social media team has in store for when they clinch. I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of love thrown over to the Comets' way.
I'd like to point out that there's still like a full month and a half left in the season. So it still shows it shows how dominant the Heat have been, really, in a conference that's been very competitive from beginning to end. I mean, they're only leading it by 2 points. The Reign are right behind them, albeit with 2 more games played. But I mean, it's been kind of crazy, and especially since they're doing it off of point percentage this year. I mean, hey, props to Stockton for getting the run and just being top to bottom one of the best teams in the AHL.
I got to give him credit, too, because I thought it would be Utica that would kind of clinch it first. It was so, close, and I'm surprised that, we're talking about this now. And We're not talking about how Ontario might get it or Utica might get it like relatively close in a short period of time. So yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. But as we look back into the week that was, the Charlotte Checkers forward Owen Tippett has been named the Player of the Week for the week ending of March 13th, 2022. Now, Tippett tallied 4 goals and 4 assists for 8 points in 4 games for Charlotte last week. On Tuesday night, Tippett recorded the second goal, the second of a 2-goal game for his professional career, helping the Checkers to a 3-1 road victory over Texas. He drew an assist on Charlotte's lone goal in Wednesday's rematch with the Stars, and he came back with a goal and 2 assists as the Checkers defeated Springfield 5-1 on Friday. And he finished the week very strong with a goal and assist on Saturday as Charlotte rallied past with a 4-3 victory over the Thunderbirds. Guys, we talked about it before, but like these are some pretty. You got to admit, going against Springfield, who's been actually not too bad in their past 10 games, it's pretty good to see that he really helped elevate Charlotte.
I love it for him personally because I know it's been kind of tough for him up in Florida. And when you get sent down to this league after you spent half a season up there, young kid picked in the top 10 of his draft class and just struggling to find even with such a talented lineup that they got up there in Florida, but struggling to get his way in the league, and you get sent down. I know it can sometimes be kind of crushing your confidence. Well, if this is any indication, this kid is just as confident as ever. And, maybe he's just got to work out some kinks to his game and work his way back up and into the Panthers once they get on their playoff run, which I mean, again, they're so talented up there. And even this Tippett, he's got the goods. Sometimes you just need some time to pull it together.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll be interested to see if he's even a member of the organization after the trade deadline. I mean, he's been rumored to be a part of potential packages for Florida to be able to shore up their scoring. And I mean, why wouldn't he be? If you're a team looking to make a deal with Florida, why wouldn't Owen Tippett be somebody that you're looking at, especially after a weekend like this? So it's going to be really fascinating to see if he's still a member of the organization. And if he is, I mean, the Checkers are all the better for it, and Florida might be all the better for it too.
And from a player development perspective, I mean, it's probably better for him to just be in that bigger role in with Charlotte as opposed to being on the third, fourth lines in Florida. I mean, we could talk about days about the depth that Florida has, and he's not going to get that same role that he has with the Charlotte, at least not for a couple of years if they want to wait for him. Yeah, I mean, like, Tippett has been just unreal at the AHL level, and he's getting that top 6 role and getting a taste of what that is like. And I mean, obviously NHL is a different beast, but I mean, like, just being in that role, being in that top 6, dependent on to score goals, put up points. That's how you should be looking at these prospects and being like, hey, let's give them time. Let's give them a scenario where they are the man. And when they come to the NHL, they can step up, hopefully relatively easier.
And it's like a coach told me in St. John's one time when he was talking about goaltending. He said, why would I sit somebody on the bench for most of the game kind of thing when he can go out there, play, and prove he's good down in the coast or the NHL or the AHL in this scenario, and he can get some good minutes and develop. And when he's ready to go, he'll be shining that he can just move up right away. So that's always some good stuff, and some more good stuff as well. It's always great when a player returns from an injury, but rarely does it happen in such excitement. Oh, I see you over there, man. And the Abbotsford Canucks and Jack Rathbone in his first game back from injury on February 16th, since an injury on February 16th in Bakersfield, he was able to tally an assist in a power play 3-1 loss, but it was Saturday's overtime thriller. Michael, I got to start with you. That was a thriller.
Oh my God. When Abbotsford was like through November, they went through a really rough patch where you were like, this team is mediocre and it's going to be mediocre. But then all of a sudden, just for whatever reason, after starting January off so rough, they've gone on a roll. And then this game, I feel like this just shows some of the flaws of Abbotsford, there's a lot of glaring holes, but it also shows how much fun this team is to watch when they're firing on all cylinders. I mean, getting Rathbone back is huge. He's been, again, Vancouver fans will know that Rathbone should have been up in the NHL since day one, but I'm selfishly really glad to see him in the AHL. He gets, again, that bigger role, and he gets to play like all these minutes, and like he's had bad luck with injuries. So seeing this game, just what he can do, it's crazy. I mean, first goal of the game, pretty passing play, going to the right places, charging to the crease to finish it off. His assist, he broke up a play in his defensive zone, breakout pass for an absolute snipe. I mean, it was an overtime thriller. We got to see some really sick goals. His skating, Rathbone almost scored the dirtiest goal of the entire week, but he walks in, undresses his defender with an inside-out move, and then tries to chip it far aside. It is something that you don't see from basically a rookie defenseman at the AHL level. Like, this kid is confident, and this kid is good.
I saw that play where he got hurt and was just glad he was okay, and that he's been able to return and just not miss a beat. I mean, it's wonderful to see. And, I watched that Eagles game, some great hockey being played between those two teams. And I had to do a double take on the schedule. I didn't even realize it was coming up real quick. This Saturday, Abbotsford's playing Bakersfield. You think they're gonna have a target out there for Colton Sevier? I think some of these Canucks are gonna be seeing red, and we'll see about that one. I don't know. I think I got that one circled on my calendar here.
Yeah, Rathbone's been on the end of a lot. He's been on the end of a lot of attention. And I mean, again, Bakersfield the Canucks didn't get along with them from day one, so it's going to be an interesting time to see what happens.
For sure. From the skies from Condors down to the forest, where we talked a little bit about the troubles of the Hershey Bears, but there was one stat that like really astounded me, and we were talking about this a little bit before, but courtesy of FBH's Corey Schwartz. Okay, so on Friday's 2-1 victory over Bridgeport, Lucas Johansson's tally at 5:04 the first period was the first time in 2 weeks that the Bears had managed to score a goal in the first. Ironically, all scoring in the game was done in the first period, but at least Zac Fucale is something that the fans could cheer about. As this weekend he became the first goalie in franchise history with 3 straight shutouts. Like you got to be talking like some high level goaltending for that, and I feel like he hasn't really had a chance to prove himself, and he did good in Washington, and now he's back in Hershey.
Yeah, holding up the Bears the best he can in those standings right now. You know, Hershey's kind of found a way to dip down a bit, fall behind in the Atlantic when they've been gunning for that top spot for a couple months now. But you know, we know what we're getting with Fucale at this point in his career. I mean, he's been doing it year after year, gone up and performed really admirably up in Washington. So Hershey knows that, you know, down the stretch as they get down here in the nitty gritty, that they got a guy that they can really, really lean on. And right now, I mean, numbers speak for itself. He's just playing absolutely lights out.
And the thing I always think about with Fucale too, for Hershey, he kind of provides that veteran presence. He's been in the AHL 5-6 seasons now. So like he's been around the block a little bit. So I guess it's always good to have someone to lean on. But I think that someone to lean on would be in Springfield, where the scoring woes keep on keeping on. We're on Friday night against Charlotte, a 5-1 loss. So the game winner came at 6:22 of the first period. In fact, Springfield's lone goal came on the power play from James Neal at 6:32 of the third. So you went like 60 minutes without barely scoring a goal. It's crazy.
Yeah. Talk about, though, the real deal James Neal. I mean, again, a guy not just like not really in the same vein as Tippett, because he was so established in this league for so long. but can't find his way up in St. Louis. And I mean, he's come down and has just been an absolutely goal-scoring machine. So he's definitely not the issue down there in Springfield. I mean, they could certainly use Scott Brunovich again back on the blue line, but that's not going to happen anytime soon from the looks of it. So despite it all, the T-Birds, they still managed to keep a hold on that top spot. I mean, they just, sometimes you just got to find a way to win a game, even when the puck's not bouncing your way. So it's, bit of a downer against the Checkers, but, still got 6 wins in their last 10. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite them.
When you look at their point differential too, their goal differential, I should say. I mean, +5 on the season, nothing crazy. I mean, especially when you look at the rest of the division leaders across the board. You've got Utica at +44, you've got Chicago at +41, you've got Stockton at +48, and then Springfield at +5. It's kind of batty when you put it into that perspective.
For sure. Now we do have a coaching update. The Ontario Reign coach, John Wroblewski, I definitely butchered that, will not return to the team. The decision is a mutual agreement, and he's on a personal leave since December. And he said, I'm looking forward to coaching at the appropriate time. So, that's the end of him. And I got to think that Ontario's been chugging along pretty well without him. So I don't know how much he'll be missed, especially in the locker room, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, though it hasn't seemed to hurt them on the ice. I don't know, the ramifications off it, but like I said, again, apparently it's been nothing that seemed to hurt him yet. So, I mean, it was a mutual decision made by both team and coach. So maybe we'll see him further down the line, but yeah, it looks like his time in Ontario is at an end.
For sure. And finally, we're going to tip our caps to Nathan Walker, who scored his 100th AHL goal on Saturday with a 4-3 victory over the Charlotte Checkers. And Nathan Walker, like we said with Fucale, he's one of those guys that can give you a lot of experience, especially in the playoffs.
Put another shrimp on the bobby there. I got to do that with every Aussie we talk about. I'm sorry.
That's fair. That might have to be in your off-season workshop. You got the Swedish this off-season, but I think this coming off-season, you might need to work on the Australian accent.
I got to work on the accent. Admittedly,
even the Australians I got to meet over there didn't talk like that.
Oh, well, speaking of other oofs around that not inside this podcast, we do have a double oof this week, and they aren't going to people, but they're going to objects. First up is Igor Sokolov's stick, though it's Manitoba giving up this one as the oof. Igor is quite happy with the result, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've got a clip of the oof here for you guys. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. And this is a prime example of things that work. So let's go ahead and get this one up here. Just talk about an oof.
Gotta wonder what flex he's using on that stick.
$1 million.
It's just like
it would have been such a better play if the stick bounced up and went into the net too.
You know what? The fact that it hit the goalie.
Yeah, that's just like insult to injury, right?
Yeah.
Well, you gotta feel bad because it's hard, right? You're so hyper focused on the play. How do you avoid? When you have that occur, how do you keep from just focusing on the fact that a stick is flying at you, right? I just can't. I couldn't do it.
It's pretty rough.
And part of me too thinks that that's a good strategy to just go up with a half broken stick, this one's on the men. I'll go up and I'll just take a great big slap shot and hope it works.
Why not?
I like to think that you actually have a 50-50 gamble of it going on net. And if it goes on net, you're scoring, right? Because you got two things flying at you now. So that's where I kind of sit with it.
I'm just thinking that maybe it's the move. And of course, that's pretty bad, right? That's not great. But I reckon we have something worse. Do you want to, Zach, tell us a little bit about this something worse? We'll
Okay.
get this. shared for the
So-
folks, because I'm sure they would love to see it. I'm sure they want nothing more than to see this atrocious.
So it's a fish fry jersey, okay? But goaltender Connor Ingram made it out to be like a little legendary with a celly. And like, how long did he leave this one to be planned out? Like, he definitely just, no.
Every time I'm watching this clip, oh my god.
Well,
Can that be the new wallpaper in the back of like down below and around? Like, how do I make that happen?
The only oof for me on that one was forward Max Latunov kind of went in to make a move on him and he lost the puck. He lost the puck. It happens. But I kind of love the jerseys and I kind of love the celly. Like that's not an oof, that's a dub in my books. I don't care what you guys say about it.
Well, and I think what makes this even worse is like, of course, the jerseys are getting enough attention as is, but then you have Matthew Olivier just absolutely cutting open Curtis Gabriel's face in a fight in that same game, and just like absolutely terrible. We won't show that clip on the show, but
he just
that then gets even more press for the jerseys. The jerseys get even more airtime because they've got Curtis Gabriel bleeding all over one of them.
I think it's one of those things where it's so bad that it crosses over to being good, just purely because that they're wearing it in a professional hockey game, and it's completely unironic.
Get the Islanders one in there too, the Captain Highliner.
Oh my god.
And, like, the two of them back to back.
That'd be 2 90s.
Oh, it would be too good. It would be too good.
We could
I
use
like
a
it,
little
though.
bit of 90s in this world.
Yeah, correct. Got to make it fun. Got to keep it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of things you don't want, this is the swipe left or swipe right portion of our program. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, open up the apps, bust it open, because we have 3 or 4 potential matches you could have right now. Okay? And we do get a super swipe. You can use one a month. I know some people have been a little trigger happy, but for now, if you totally like it, you can do a little super swipe. And we'll start off with swiping all the way up to Andrew.
We always swipe up on me. Well, actually, probably not this week. I'm not gonna lie. I opened up my apps today with just some absolute low energy output coming on. I mean, this is like a last minute, hastily thrown together profile, and it's not wrong though. I don't think it's just that Stefan Nason, I believe, is going to end up with the most goals and he's currently leading in the AHL in goals. But he will finish at the top at season's end. But I believe maybe it was just watching some of that Abbey Canucks that made me a believer this past weekend. But I think that Sheldon Dries is going to end up with a better ratio of goals per game. But just by the nature that the Wolves play more games, you're going to see Stefan Nason maybe getting more commended for it, unfairly or fairly. I'll leave that one up to you.
Well, I'll swipe right on that. I completely agree for a little bit of a different reason. Sheldon Dries is one of the only players that hasn't been called up to the NHL for any prolonged basis for whatever reason. I mean, like his line mate Sheldon Rempel has been up, Nick Batten, Phil Giuseppe. Dries has been sticking around in Abbey, and I mean, just based on how much he means to the team and how much of a focal point he is for offense. I mean, I think I'd agree. He's just going to get more looks, and he's going to be leaned upon to pop more goals in less games than Nason.
I mean, it's hard, in my opinion, to pick against the Wolves in anytime we're talking about scoring, right? Like, it's just a really hard thing to pick against. And so, yeah, I'll swipe right too. I just think that, I mean, getting set up and getting opportunities by some of the high scorers that the Wolves have, I mean, it seems like a perfect formula for him to be on top at season's end.
Oh, he got me on the fence. See, because normally I would say, yeah, Martin Ferk. I kind of believe that he might actually do it, right? But I know that Ferk is out right now, I believe. So
Who's up with LA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, out with the lineup. So, and he's soon going to be out to Detroit, but that's a different story. Yeah, I'll like it because I really do like Sheldon Dries, and I do think that he does have a bit more gas in the tank. He looks like he's not really stopping his role anytime soon. So yeah, I'll give it to you there.
So what you're saying is I'm trying too hard on my apps. I just need to come in with low effort, low energy every time, and I get just 3 swipes right off the bat.
Is this like the blurry picture, kind of just like,
I don't know. I guess you guys are trying to tell me something. I just need to change my game up, apparently.
Happens to the best of us. But speaking of changing the game up a little bit, as we've talked about, as we've alluded to, the NHL trade deadline has pretty serious implications on the league that we cover. And one of the rumors out there right now is that a few teams might be interested in one Jacob Pelletier, who we've spent plenty of time talking about on this show. And for that very reason, my hot take is that by the end of the trade deadline, the next time we record, Jacob Pelletier will not be a member of the Stockton Heat.
Yeah, Montreal loves their homegrown players way too much for, and Calgary's in the market for a guy like Ben Sherratt. It's almost too obvious, but I mean, if you're Calgary, you're shooting for a win now. It's that Ben Sherratt's exactly the kind of guy that you need in front of a guy like Markstrom to take it home. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of movement coming up here in the next week, and I think Jacob's going to be one of those guys that's going to be on the move. So yeah, I'll swipe right on that.
I'm going to swipe left. I think, yes, it would make a lot of sense for them to trade Pelletier if they want to win now. But at the same time, looking through what Calgary has in the system, I don't think they can afford to part with him. Like, he's one of their higher end prospects. And for a team that is probably needs to start looking seriously at supplementing their core eventually with cheaper depth, it doesn't make too much sense, at least for me, to part with him for, let's say, a Sherratt for a playoff run. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I think that Calgary's still far away from a team like Colorado, especially with how Colorado's angling themselves to acquire Giroux, and even with the team they have now. I just don't think that it's wise to give up Pelletier, and I don't think Calgary would. Well, I just don't think they'll part with him just because about how well he's performing, B, how he's part of a really limited prospect pool. So it's got to be a swipe left for me.
Yeah, and I do think that Michael makes a lot of good points. The way, I do really like where you guys were coming from, because I really do think that the Sherratt idea for Montreal is great because they love their homegrown players, and he probably does speak a bit of French, which helps for the fan base, right? But I think it all comes down to where Montreal is kind of sitting with it. Do they plan on bulking up their, young guns a little bit? Montreal's prospect pool isn't exactly great kind of thing, and they got to start looking at, are we going to kind of go for the first round pick, or are we going to try to win? And I do think that they are going to try to win, and they're going to try to go for that prospect and try to do a semi-rebuild and come back next season. So I could see that trade actually happening, because Sherratt's kind of looked like a player that they just kind of want to dump and get rid of because they can't find a decent spot for him where he would kind of excel like Calgary. So yeah, I'll go for it.
I appreciate that. See, I mean, Brad Treliving, I just don't. Michael, I'm with you. If I'm Brad Treliving, he's an untouchable. But exactly. I don't know. I don't know if I trust him.
Calgary has done more mind-boggling things in the past, so I wouldn't put anything past them. But I don't think it's a great move. As for mine, I think that despite McKelly leading the point totals, despite Pelletier playing on one of the best teams in the AHL, I feel that the Rookie of the Year award in the AHL is going to go to Marco Rossi. We all know about how he's come back from a heart condition and how, I mean, he's faced a lot of adversity even to get to this point, and he's playing at a point per game pace at the AHL in his very first season. So, I mean, hey, like that's just he's showing why he's a top 10 pick, and I think that he stands a very good chance of being named Rookie of the Year.
Stands a very good chance, yes. Wins. I was just kind of taking a look at, not that like I vote on this, but if I did, as of today, yeah, I'm probably, Michelli's up there right now. Obviously, he's probably not going to be there for perhaps the rest of the year, so that's gonna knock him down. But that being said, I mean, Pelletier's there with 48 points, and he's kind of one of the big driving factors in that Stockton team. In his first year, I mean, that's pretty incredible in of itself. And not to discount anything Rossi's doing, but you already got two guys looking pretty good ahead of him. And I really like Alexander Holtz. And then if you're going to push me to it, he's tied right now with points with a guy from Ontario and Jordan Spence, who's getting a lot of those points from the blue line. So I got to elevate him. I'm already putting Rossi down at number 4, and this isn't like the Marco Rossi hate club or anything. I don't want to put it down like that. I'm just saying he's got a shot. I'll give you that much, but I'm gonna have to swipe left on him winning it. I just think he's got a tough group of rookies out of him.
I don't make these decisions, and we're a month and a half out. I'm swiping left.
Wow, that was quick. Man, I was gonna give you a revenge left, Michael, or I was just like, man, I gotta get back at him. But I don't know. Now I'm feeling like a little bad. Like I'm feeling like maybe I should like give you a pity swipe. I don't know. The story's so good. The story is really good. And that does something to voters, right? Like, I mean, it's hard to ignore it. I just don't know if it's going to be enough. And part of the issue, if I was in a playoff spot right now and they look like they're going to be competitive and maybe have a chance, and Rossi's contributing to that, then maybe I feel a lot better about it. I'm really trying to talk myself into it. I can't, though. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm trying to spend it.
No, like, I mean, hey, it's a hot take, right?
Oh, man. But it's a good hot take. I mean, that is textbook hot take material.
In all love, I see Pelletier kind of going like pretty deep with Stockton in a team that's just rolling, right? Kind of thing. So yeah, and that's the other side of it too, is once they get into the playoffs and he goes on a tear possibly, are they going to say, guess we can't pick him because, this guy had a relatively good regular season, right? So yeah, kind of where I sit with it. But I also sit with Colorado. Okay. And I want to put myself in the shoes of a player, and I'm on the move. Maybe I'm whoever, right? Okay. It's Jacob Pelletier. Very well. I want to go to a team like Colorado because I think that with all these moves that Colorado is making the angle for Giroux, like we talked about, and they got rid of Yost and whatever, that it kind of opens up the door for the possibility of more call-ups, more ice time with the Eagles and possibly the Avalanche. So if I'm a player on the move, I'm going to Colorado.
I can dig it. Unfortunately, I think a lot, if we've kind of already gauged what the Avalanche have done at the deadline, leading up to the deadline, trading for Josh Manson, trading for Nico Sturm. the youth is going to be kind of making an exodus out of the Rocky Mountain State here, I think. So do we want to go to Colorado? Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful state. It's a great organization. There's not much you can really hate on about it, but you look at a guy like Mikhail Maltsev, who I'm sure Philly's going to have their eye on him. He was brought in the offseason and their own trade from New Jersey could possibly be a piece going across. I don't know. I don't think they're desperate enough to get rid of Jordan Gross yet, but at the same time, if they've already traded Hellison, I know Bo Byram's name has been thrown out there, and just when you have a blue line as talented as the Avalanche, there's just not a whole lot of room left. So what are you going to do? You're just going to keep Jordan Gross in with the Eagles for the next 8 years? Exaggerating a little bit, but Martin Kaut, I think, is another guy, kind of like in the same breath of, oh my God, I'm just blanking on the name, Owen Tippett. Former first round pick, a guy who just between not getting the opportunities in a loaded team in front of him, and maybe just not kind of really finding the finer points of his game. Sometimes all he needs is a change of scenery. So all that was meant there to say, I mean, you want to do it, but the team's just they're looking to give away more than take on right now. So I'll swipe left on it.
I think that Colorado has a lot more talent. I mean, for instance, take Dylan Sekura. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. And I mean, this guy's been driving a lot of Colorado offense as of late. Annington's not going anywhere because, oh my God, we all know how Colorado is struggling with their goaltending depth. I mean, it's one of those where it's like I know what you mean, Zach, but I think that the Eagles can stay very competitive even if they are shedding some of the pieces. So I'm going to swipe left.
I think it's all relative, right? Like competitive, sure, they can stay competitive if they don't rebuild, but against what? Against who? Like in the division where Stockton and Ontario, I mean, it just doesn't. And obviously, like, that's going to change too, right? Like over time. But it just feels like in order to be considered able to get out of this Pacific, you've got to be special. Like, you've got to be a special team. I don't think Colorado is as special as Stockton or as special as Ontario. And with the way that the AHL has things set up, with the soon-to-be addition of the Coachella Valley Firebirds into that division, it's going to be a 10-team division. It's not going to get easier. I mean, in order to be competitive, I see it, and I think it's palatable. I think it's a good destination. I think if you're a guy who has kind of struggled to be in an NHL lineup regularly and you want to try to rebuild what you've got, why not do it in Colorado? And if things work out, you get called up, chances are you might just be able to ride the pine to a Stanley Cup ring. I mean, it's stuff like that where it's like, I'm signing up. I'm doing it. I'm going to swipe right.
I'll have you know that we're going to be a match made in heaven. Okay. And speaking of a good 1-2 combo, Jordan Spence in the NHL in our They Grow Up So Fast segment in his debut with the LA Kings this week, as well as Eric Kallgren with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But Spence made history with his debut as he was the first skater with Japanese citizenship and the first Australian born to play in the NHL.
First skater is an important distinction. I'm pretty sure
it was a Japanese goaltender.
I'm pretty sure the Kings had a Japanese goaltender at one point.
Yutaka Fukufuji.
Yes.
Yep. NHL 08 legend.
Let's go.
You go on Olympic mode and you play as like the US or Canada and think you're just going to light up Japan. No, not going to happen. No. We got this superstar.
The Japanese Dominic Hasek. I love it. Of
course.
And, I just want to just wish the best of luck for Erik Källgren because I don't know if anyone's paid attention to the Toronto media lately, but the whole circus about what's been going on in their nets hasn't been kind to goaltenders. And like I earnestly mean that for Eric, because like take care of your mental health, man. That's all I can say, because like all you need is just one muffin to slide in through the legs, and then you have a whole hockey community going grabbing the pitchforks after you. So he'll be fine. This guy was great. He's a great goaltender. Was awesome with the Marlies. He's going to be up just for a couple weeks while Campbell's out, or unless a trade's made for a goaltender, and anything's possible in Leafland. So I enjoyed watching.
Is anything possible in Leafland? I don't think they're ever getting out of the first round.
Well, yeah, the second round's not possible, but
Well, that's one thing that I've talked about before too. The name that really comes to mind is Michael Hutchinson, who played really well and does play really well in the AHL. But when he gets called up to the Maple Leafs, it's like, oh, what am I looking at? You're Swiss cheese, right? There's so much pressure from, I'm going to say Leafs net, that they have to do good, right? And that's truly the biggest problem right now, is there's so much pressure on the Maple Leafs to do good that I definitely think that there's something there. Even as the Leafs lineup we look at now, not to go too far off, is that they're just under so much stress and pressure of the NHL that they just don't perform where they might want to.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I think it's also worth noting, right? Like, just because a goaltender is successful in one of these leagues doesn't mean that they're going to translate, to the other. I mean, you look at just a prime example. A few weeks ago, JF Berube is up in Columbus making a difference with the major league squad, and this weekend against Grand Rapids, I mean, it just was awful. Like, it just was bad, and that's not comparing the defenses there. I mean, Cleveland's got some work to do, but it just is fascinating the way that these games don't necessarily translate. And so you hope that his game translates and he plays well any chance that he gets. But wow, just a unique position, goalie.
It's a Leafs goaltender nonetheless.
Yeah,
Well,
you're the savior when you're playing well, and you're the leper when you're playing bad. There's no way you can win. There really isn't. I mean, there was no higher praise when Jack Campbell was on that winning streak last year. And it feels like it was in 1994 at this point. Like, that poor
Remember
guy.
at the start of the year how all the Toronto media was like, "Hey, Jack Campbell's better than Thatcher Demko. He's going to make the Olympic team." Lo and behold, you end up where we are today.
Well, things aren't always so bad. The grass is sometimes greener on the other side in the American Hockey League. We got a couple great people at the top of the scoring leader for points on the skater side. And going up and down the list, 1 through 10 again this week is all Western Conference. I'll go down through the list and we'll chat about it a little bit. TJ Tynan is still number 1 in the league. 45 games played, 74 points. Just behind is Podorowski, 71 points in 51 games played. It goes down to Ferg, Nason, Michelli, Dries, Seth Griffin, Rocco Grimaldi, Kiefer Sherwood, and to round out the Colorado scene is Dylan Sakura. I think that it's pretty well status quo here, guys.
Yeah, you're not going to see a lot of movement at this point of the year unless someone goes on an absolute tear. And even then, you got some guys who are performing so well where if, Rocco Grimaldi had a 5-point weekend, but Seth Griffin had 4 points. So you're not seeing a lot of movement from week to week. I mean, you look at it, 2-3 weeks ago compared to now, it's a bit of a different story, but you guys you only have so many number of games per week. We just keep, how much can you report on, they both had 3-4 points, or, they had 6 points and moved up 1 spot.
And it's important to note too that the difference between second and third place is 13 points. So, I mean, that might have a little bit of a story to tell as well, that just Podorowski and Tynan are not moving anywhere anytime soon. Maybe amongst each other, but that's about it. So that'll be something to watch. Other things to watch are the top skaters and goals, where it's pretty well not too bad. But Stefan Nason now leading the league in points and goals. Martin Frk has been called up to the Kings, obviously. But could Nason gain some distance, or will Dries have something to say about it? We'll have to see. Nason has 32 goals. Dries has 31, so it's just that one goal in the difference. Right now it's Nason, Frk, Dries, Sherwood, and Rocco Grimaldi. And I mean, we kind of talked about Dries earlier and how he is doing pretty well for himself.
Considering, yeah, he's got 44 games played to Nason's 49. So I think, when you kind of round the numbers out, maybe, you might have to put Dries a little bit ahead there. But at any rate, I mean, Nason doesn't control the schedule. You can only play what games are out on there. But you never know if the Canucks got a couple more games against the Barracuda down the stretch. Maybe you could open up some more opportunities for Dries to kind of take over there.
I'm gonna go check. I'm gonna go check for those right now. See how. I mean, hey,
see how interesting this race is really gonna get.
Well, and that's the other side of it too. Is again, like we talked about earlier, there's actually no teams from the East except for Gabriel Dumont from Syracuse, who has 24 goals. So again, that kind of talks so much about how dominant the Western Conference is right now too. But as we move down to rookie point getters, the only thing that seems to separate Pelletier and JJ Peterka from being the top rookie point getter is if Michelli doesn't come back soon. We could have a battle on our hands as early as next episode. Pelletier and Peterka both at 44 tied. Pelletier has that slate advantage because of the games played and whatnot. But going up and down the list, Michelli is still first. He's got a good 7 points in difference. But going down to Pelletier, Peterka, Marco Rossi, we talked about earlier, Jordan Spence, Alexander Holtz, and Reichel. And it's like we talked about earlier in the picks as well. All of these guys seem to be good contenders for the AHL MVP for rookies.
I feel like this could honestly go down a little more, a little closely and a little more exciting than maybe the overall point scoring race, just because it's kind of hard to gauge some of these rookies. Like, you might have one who has young guy has a quiet weekend, doesn't move up, and then you have another guy who might take advantage of that, and he blows up and has 5 points on a weekend and then shoots right up there. I mean, we've seen a couple times where, last week I was like, where did Jordan Spence come from? All of a sudden, here he is at the top of the leaderboard, and if it wasn't for his call up, who knows where he'd be sitting at right now. So, if Jonathan Bergeron decides to go out and feel dangerous and have a 4-point weekend, well, all of a sudden he's ninth, tied for fourth, So I think it's a little more wide open over here. Just kind of the, this run and gun play style. Some of these young kids keeps it exciting. I love it.
And I think I'm going to call for another weekend at IKEA, because that seems to really work for the Swedes. So we'll have to see what all that comes down to. But when we talk about the points and the goals for these rookies, Jacob Pelletier, again, number one right now, but just behind is Alexander Holtz, which is really amazing that he has the same amount of goals, basically just a goal in difference, but 12 games in difference between the two of them. And that's why decisions like these become so much harder. And Jack Quinn is also in the mix as well, only 3 goals in difference at 19. And again, he has, hold on, my math, 22 games in difference. And so it's kind of one of those things where how do you kind of judge how well someone's been playing when there's 22 games in between both of these teams and both these players?
Jack Quinn's the real deal.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you wonder what would happen if he wouldn't have been called up to Buffalo. I'm thinking the same thing about like if Alexander Holtz wouldn't have spent some time with the Dallas. You wonder like what would this look like? I mean, I think those two would probably have run away with some things, right? And so, I don't know. You got to hope that the Americans figure something out for Quinn, or that Quinn figures something out for the Americans soon, because they need all of the goals they can get from him in order for them to be successful. They they need him to win this race.
And I think he's one of those players I would love to see in the playoffs and how he kind of performs over the next little while. So that's something that we'll keep tabs on. Keeping the tabs open on Alex Lyon, though, who's still the best goaltender in the leagues, and we've known that for quite some time. 2.13 goals against average. Troy Grosnick's still pretty good actually out there for someone who we don't talk about either, a 2.17, and Stuart Skinner coming down with the 2.23 out of Bakersfield.
And it's kind of wild to see that, Alex Lyon he's been tremendous all year for Chicago. And not that it's any fault of his, but I really don't know come playoff time if he's going to be the starting goalie for these Wolves. I mean, they've had I can't honestly pronounce it, so I'm going to call him Peter, but it's more like Pyotr Kochekov, who's come over from Russia and hasn't lost a game in regulation yet. He's got a sub 2 goals against average. I mean, and this kid's just out here making absolute circus acrobatic saves, and he kind of looks like a world beater right now. And it's nothing against Lyon, but I don't know how this kid, if he keeps this up until for the next month and a half.
Holy
I don't
really?
know.
This guy, wow, he had a 0.926 save percentage in the KHL.
Yeah,
that's absurd.
And his team was out of the playoffs. Like he did that virtually on his own. Not, obviously he's a goalie, not on his own, but he doesn't have, comparatively to the rest of the league's talent, he does not have the defensive help that the Wolves are giving him. So when you get a team that prides itself on its puck possession like Chicago does and limits those kind of high danger chances, and then when they do get the high danger chances, he's up to task. I don't like it. It's weird seeing Lyon up there at your goals against leader and then looking and you're probably the second option when the postseason starts. It's wild, but that's the league.
They just his KHL team barely missed out on the playoffs. Not even barely. That's they were out and they conceded quite a lot of goals, but it wasn't on him.
Right.
That's crazy.
That's another thing to watch for as we come into the playoffs. Now, speaking of the playoffs and the quest for the Holy Grail, before we take it all around the screen kind of thing to tell you about where we kind of sit right now, the Atlantic Division is still looking pretty hot. Oh, it's like so much leapfrog up and down right now, and the Thunderbirds, as least as we record, finds themselves in the leaders for now in the division. But we know it's a considerably tight division, and that their records kind of indicate that it's pretty well even all around. Like no one's really been on a streak, but that could change as early as this weekend.
Yeah, the Atlantic is just a strange one, and the North, I mean, not a lot changing here in the North. Belleville's kind of come out of left field. I don't think anybody, especially not on this podcast, had them at 3 in the North when the season started. Anybody know?
No,
yeah. So obviously they're tied in that position with Laval right now, and so anytime those two match up over the course of the next few weeks, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But don't look now, guys. But the Americans in the crunch are neck and neck. Courtesy of a crunch win against the Americans this last weekend in a shootout or an overtime, excuse me. Yeah, the Crunch are on the heels of the Americans, and the Americans have got to get something figured out quick. They've allowed the second most goals in the league, 207, second only to the San Jose Barracuda have let up 210. It's going to be really fascinating to watch how this one comes down. Americans 4-5-1 in their last 10. The Crunch 5-2-2-1. And I mean, even the Monsters are 6-2-1-1 in their last 10. I mean, the only teams that are playing bad hockey right now in the North are the Americans and really, frankly, the Marlies. So we'll see what happens.
Who would have thought, like, after the first month of the season that we'd find Rochester fighting for their playoff lives in March? So as we move over to the Central, I mean, there's three things that are certain in life. I mean, it's death, it's taxes, and the Central Division standings just remaining the same. I don't think these have changed for the last month, but in case you have missed out on the last month of action, you got, Chicago at the top, as they've been all season. Manitoba right behind them, Milwaukee, Grand Rapids, Rockford, and then your couple of teams on the outside looking in. You got Iowa and then Texas. So, Chicago, Manitoba, Milwaukee, I mean, they're just kind of on their own collective roles right now. And even the Griffins have won a couple straight. So it's tough to kind of drum up any kind of playoff race drama in this division when everything's so stagnant and the teams up top are getting their points. I mean, Chicago's got points in 10 straight. They're not going to be in any danger anytime soon. Milwaukee's been on a roll with 6 wins in their last 10. Grand Rapids, 6 wins in their last 10. I don't know, say Rockford's been in kind of a free fall, and you can say, well, maybe, Iowa can come sneak up on there, but Iowa Wild, oh my God, 3-6-1 in their last 10. And you got to look out in your rearview mirror because here come the Texas Stars out of the basement. 3 straight wins, and they have tied the Wild in terms of point percentage. So that's going to be the most drama you're going to be getting out of this division.
We both said it.
Yeah. It's I don't know, Iowa. What are you doing? So, but at this point, when you look at those last 3 teams, it's who wants it less, really? Who's gonna limp their way into the playoffs, into that last spot? Because these 3 teams have combined for an 11-17 1-1 record. It's there. You just gotta want it, man. That's all it is. Is anyone gonna step up, or is Rockford just gonna stumble and tumble their way into a playoff round somehow with Grand Rapids?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say the same about the Pacific, where there's actually a fight for last playoff place. It's more or less been decided at this point. Out here on the West Coast, you've got top 6. The top 6 are pretty clustered together, but then there's a significant drop off to the bottom 3. If there's one thing to look out for, it'll be interesting to see if San Jose can actually, if they can actually do pass the Tucson Roadrunners. I mean, San Jose is playing average, and Tucson's playing below average. So it'll be interesting to see if they can finally get out of the basement where their imprints have been left. I mean, Tucson, they added what? They have Ryan Dzingel. I mean, oh my God, I still remember how he was a major contributor to that Jackets series way back 3 years ago. I mean, how far the mighty have fallen. But yeah, Matthias McKelly's up with the big club, and I mean, hey, it works out for him, and I mean, he's earned it. Abbotsford, they've been one of the hotter teams as of late. I mean, not as hot as Stockton, Ontario, Colorado. The top 3 have just been on another level, but in the middle of the pack, there's still a lot of places to struggle with. Abbotsford, they've been much, much better in recent months, and Bakersfield has started to slip a bit, so it'll be interesting to see if they can pass the Condors at any given point. And of course, the Knights sit not far behind, but they are slumping hard, just like their bigger brothers.
Well, with all that in mind, lots of good races there. We'll move down to some of the games that might be on tap this weekend, and I know that there's a couple good ones. We'll start in alphabetical order, none of this crazy backwards stuff that we hear every now and again, and we'll go up to Andrew.
Sure. So as we start off with our game of the week in the Atlantic, I'm going with tonight's game with Providence going into Charlotte, taking on the Checkers. And I mean, how big is this series for the Bruins right now? I mean, they just dropped a pair of cupcakes against Bridgeport at home, and you fall out of the top spot in the division, and now you got to head to the most rambunctious house in the league in the Bojangles Coliseum for a 3-game series with the Checkers. Tonight's game is going to set the tone for the rest of the series and potentially for the season for Providence. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I love your commitment to the Bojangles Coliseum. I think I've not seen any stronger of a commitment. You and me both. It's a perfect name for an arena. But yeah, I'm going to go with Wilkes-Barre Scranton Toronto. Obviously any chance we get to have some cross-divisional matchups, I think all of us kind of tend to favor those matchups. Like I mentioned, Toronto's on a little bit of a slump as we record here on Tuesday. 3-7 in their last 10, although they just got back in the win column. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they play against Wilkes-Barre Scranton. A team that's sitting there in the bottom of the Atlantic. The Marlies is a team that really could potentially still be fighting for a second overall seed in the North. It's going to be fascinating to see if the Marlies can pull together.
For me, it will be Lehigh Valley in Springfield. I want to see lots of goals, and I think that Springfield can do it against Lehigh Valley because, I mean, it's the riches of the conference versus one of the poorer teams of the conference. So, I mean, hey, if you want to see some goals, want to see just a team beating up on another, kind of want to. It might not be the most competitive hockey, but it'll be fun to see this the disparity between the two.
Yeah, and for me, it's Hershey and Laval. I mean, these two teams have similar records in the past while, but if these two teams don't smarten up quick, they're going to lose their playoff spots. And just mere average records in the past 10 aren't enough in two really competitive divisions. And we've seen just how competitive the Atlantic is. We talked about it earlier. And the North Division is the same sort of way. Like we've seen how the mighty have fallen in Rochester. So, I mean, for both these teams, it's huge points on the line.
Yeah, for sure. And as we move over to the north, I got Friday's game. We got Hershey going in the Belleville, and I just kind of I wonder, are the Sens for real, or is the North just that chaotic? Well, I think we're gonna find maybe our answer here, and we got a good test for the Senators going to test their mettle outside of the division with the Hershey team. That's, as we talked about, it's kind of looking their way to climb back way up the standings in the Atlantic. So we'll see if the Sens are here to stay, or if this is just a matter of everyone else kind of collapsing around them.
Yeah, and Zach alluded to how the Americans have fallen from grace as well. This weekend's matchup between the Cleveland Monsters and the Rochester Americans, it couldn't mean more. I think both of these teams probably came into the season hoping that a matchup this late in the season would have implications on who was going to be toward the top of the North. It's not the case. And so for both of these teams, they've got a lot to prove. For Rochester, I mean, you lose these two games this weekend, it's far from over, but it just looks bleak. I mean, it's hard to keep the morale up after that. Whereas if you're Cleveland, if you can make up ground on that team that sits in fifth, you're going to want to do it. And if you can do it, more power to you. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. It's going to be a lot of competitive hockey. Bet the over. That would be my advice. Just over on everything.
Makes sense. For me, Syracuse versus Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Both teams I felt should have done better at this point of the season, but hey, they're very close together in the standings. Even though in this cross division, should be a good contest. I mean, these two teams are very similar, and again, I just feel that they have underperformed this year. Granted, they've seen a lot of upheaval and whatnot, but hey, I think it'll be a good game.
Yeah, and I think that Utica and Cleveland going against each other are going to be the kind of matchup. I mean, we kind of alluded to it before as well, but I mean, we're really starting to get a true appreciation of how well Cleveland actually plays when they have the team. And for the longest while, they didn't have a team. So, I mean, when they go against Utica, this could be the opportunity to kind of snag some points. And I don't want to say get out of the basement of the North, but get out towards the bottom, right? Like, the basement is very shallow in the North Division, and this is a good chance to kind of bolster up your points.
As we move over to my beat in the Central, I'm going to go a little further down in the week and go to Tuesday's game with Grand Rapids going into in Ontario. And as much as I wanted to pick the Wolves Revenge Tour in Toronto, yeah, keep smirking, Zach. A Griffin's California tour is kicking off this week, where they're gonna take on Ontario. They're gonna have a doubleheader against Bakersfield, and then finish out in Ontario before they're coming back. So they're gonna start off against the most potent offensive team in the land. I mean, absolutely sign me up. Grand Rapids split their home series earlier this season against the Reign, and after finally getting their first dub against Chicago in 9 games, they really look like they've been playing with a renewed confidence. So I want to see how this team handles this road trip, and it starts here against one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, the Griffins have looked really good recently. That's a good pick. And I think for me, I'm interested to see if Rockford's going to put a little bit of extra flex in their stick, if they're going to take notes on the defeating Manitoba strategy. Because, yeah, this matchup between Rockford and Manitoba, it's going to be interesting. Manitoba, we talk about them pretty frequently on the show as just being probably the best team that we don't talk about in depth. But at the end of the day, Rockford, as Andrew said, they probably are the team that should be able to figure things out and put things together and sneak into the playoffs there in the Central. But, this one means a lot. It's just a lot of jostling for position at the bottom of that division. And if they can win this one against Manitoba, it's going to be a great step in the right direction.
For me, so almost a similar outlook. I picked Manitoba versus Iowa. I mean, with how the recent records, I feel like the recent records suggest this could be a closer game. I mean, obviously Iowa, they're worlds apart in terms of the standings, but Iowa, if they want to not be in the bottom of this division, they should figure this out. They should try and get a couple points out of this matchup. And I mean, it's something that they're capable of, but it's just one of those things where you got to see it to believe it. And I feel that's why this game's worth watching.
3 words: Wolves Revenge Tour. Yeah, this is like we kind of alluded to it earlier. This is kind of the game that I really want to see, because I don't want to say that the Marlies kind of got away with one the last time, because it was a really hard fought battle, but the Wolves are such a strong team, and I know that the Marlies have been kind of struggling a little bit over the past little while, so it'll be a good one to kind of see when both these collide.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly my 1B to my 1A pick for the week. And as we move over to the Pacific, I had a bit of a different pick for the game of the week, but now, I mean, after under further review, I got to go with Saturday's Abbotsford against Bakersfield. I mean, this will be the first game between the Canucks and the Condors since Rathbone's injury, and all I got to say is Colton Sevier better keep his head up, because I think the Canucks are going to be gunning for him. This is going to be, I mean, they're tightly contested in the standings, and there might be some bad blood if this one starts to get away from them. There could be some fireworks in this one, so I'm all about it. I want to see how the Canucks respond.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard not to pick the 8-9 matchup whenever you can. So go ahead and give me Tucson and San Jose in this one. Just a lot of really stellar hockey happening there at the bottom of the division. So yeah, give me 8-9.
The battle for 400.
So, sometimes you have like the masterpiece of games, and then all of a sudden you get.
Hey, those ones are just as fun to watch.
It's just like the Ottawa Arizona game, right? Oh my god. I'm gonna have to agree with Andrew. I mean, that's a game that's a game that Canucks fans will be very interested in seeing. And I mean, there's no love lost between these two teams, and they're jostling for those playoff positions anyways, not to mention with how the past contests have gone, where it's been just lots of extracurriculars to say. So, my pick is Abbotsford and Bakersfield.
Well, when you're not watching Abbotsford and Bakersfield pound each other against the boards, or Scott Reedy's terrible plus-minus, but goals, I think that I like the idea of Stockton and Colorado, and that's simply because the Eagles have been nothing short of spectacular in the past few weeks. Like we talk about it on the podcast so much, and I really do think that they're one of the most underrated teams in the AHL right now, and how well that they can play and move the puck. It's actually quite refreshing to see. But they're going against Stockton, and by the way, Stockton has 9 regulation losses. So, 9.
There's a reason that they're about to clinch a playoff berth, like weeks ahead of anyone else.
That is a very scary sight. There's teams who are out there who seemingly only have 9 regulation wins. So, yeah, that's my game. But on that very, very interesting note, that is it for us. Already, it's been an absolute blast hanging out with these 4 guys. And if you like us, please make sure to subscribe, like, share, rate the podcast, and tell it to all your beer league buddies. If you really like us, be sure to give us a follow on Twitter.
You can find me at either at FPH Wolves or at FPH Griffins.
And you can hit me up at FPH Americans.
For me, at FPH Canucks.
And I'm the FBH Marlies. But be sure to also check out some of the other interesting podcasts that are on the Field Pass Hockey Network. And we also have live games on our app as well. Inside the SPHL with James Hayes. That's an interesting look at all the SPHL there. Syracuse Speaks with Alexander Ackerman. And it's a Syracuse Crunch-centered podcast which focuses on maintaining a balanced perspective of the ever-shifting hockey we definitely live, eat, sleep, and die for. The Monsters Musing with Jay Forrester and Dina Weinheimer at the Monsters Musings. They discuss the storylines, the good and recently the bad of the Cleveland Monsters, but they got lots of good stuff to come out, as well as a 3-period podcast with Matt Harding and Matthew Will talking about all the great stuff that's happening in the ECHL. On behalf of all of us here at the Holy GrAHL, we'd like to thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll hope to see you next Thursday. Have a good one.
This has been the Holy GrAHL Podcast. Have a question or a topic suggestion? Hit us up on Twitter or drop us an email. For the latest news across the American Hockey League and the rest of minor league hockey, download the Field Pass Hockey app, now available in the Apple and Android app stores.